Chapter 5. The Devious and the Slaves. Kai had no real intention of allowing Jilu to accompany him on his journey. He was, as a rule, a solitary man. This was mainly to keep anyone he came across out of direct danger. He knew he was a marked man for many years and never stopped hiding since the Order of the Moon was dissolved. Trust was a word Kai not only knew well, but also knew how it could be misused and manipulated. The new dawn broke over the now full-bellied duo on the shore of Lek. Still unsure of each other and rightfully afraid of what trust could bring, the morning broke in silence as they once again ate a meal together on the shoreline. Kai asked Jilu, "So lad, what's your plan? Will you go searching for more magic or look for some work?" Jilu sighed. "To be honest, I'm not worthy of the wild world. I know so little of how things work and history that I'm a man out of place here." Kai looked with pity on Jilu because of his obvious fear of the unknown. But he respected him for his honesty regarding his ignorance. Kai had encountered so many arrogant types in his life. Those who would remain flippant or even dismissive of dangers he knew too well. But he felt he had to send him on his way, back to a calmer life than he would have, being his travelling companion. "Listen to me, lad. Above the borders of Sepa there are 2 small towns. Just hamlets, really, but they're surrounded by good farmland." "Who lives there?" Jilu interjected. "Our good people," Kai replied. "Simple folk who care for their land and animals. Probably the only group left that bore no witness to the Khan or their damage." Kai prepared a parcel of dried meat and fruit for Jilu, along with a flask of fresh wine mixed with water for his journey. He saw that his only weapon was a wooden spear. So Kai gave Jilu a small dagger to keep with him. "Hold on to this and keep it secret, lad," Kai said seriously. "It is a dagger from my order." Jilu looked at his gift and saw the same moon and flame motif on its handle. "Showing this to the wrong person could start a shitstorm of trouble for you, lad." Then with another wry smile he added, "If you ever have to use it, make sure you kill the bastard." Jilu laughed and politely accepted the dagger. "Thank you so much, Kai," said Jilu. "This is the first gift I've ever received in my life. I'll treasure this." With his new weapon and enough food for a few days' travel, Jilu bid farewell to this warrior, a man who only hours ago he was terrified of and feared for his life. Now he felt respect for him and his plight. He turned back along the soot and ash-laden path back up the hill to Sepa. Honestly not exactly sure where he was going, but he felt it important that he looked confident. Humming the melody to Sand's song that he heard on those bleak battlefields for comfort, the taste of a good breakfast on his lips, and more in the parcel on his back. However, he got approximately 20 feet away from the shoreline and heard a chilling sound. Behind him, Kai had drawn his sword and was slowly approaching Jilu. The long, curved blade pointed at him. Kai's gaze had changed from pity to one of real anger. Stalking Jilu in slow, measured steps, he came to within a blade's reach. "How do you know that fucking tune? Speak, boy! Answer me!" Kai bellowed in anger. Jilu had not heard before. "Answer my question, lad, or I will cut you down where you fucking stand." Kai shouted now, with his blade hovering over Jilu's shoulder. The blade had not a tremor, a practiced swordsman's hand. Jilu stood frozen to the ground in a catatonic state of fear. "I said answer me! How do you know this song? How?" "Stop, please," begged Jilu. "I will tell you everything, but please don't kill me. Please!" Kai relented slightly and brought the sword back a little from Jilu's now tear-stained cheek. "It was Sand's song, the slave who saved me from dying by the battlefields. He protected me and showed me how to cross these haunted battlefields. He sung his song and I sang him one of mine. It was our way of befriending each other. I didn't understand the words but remembered the melody. "Oh, you ignorant fool," exclaimed Kai with a melancholic sigh. "You have no idea just how fucking lucky you are to be alive, boy. No idea how close you came, do you?" "What are you talking about?" replied Jilu. "Eok fala tun se canit, eok nepfan nedfa hanit, Afa now canfa domcro, tun fe ta fella teok con lo." Kai sang these words in an ominous timbre. Like a dark, melodious warning, Jilu stood there shocked. "How? That's the song San sung to me, word for word. What does it mean?" "It's a Khan loyalty song sung by the devious gatherers of souls who roam these lands, harvesting the weak and the treacherous," Kai explained with the utmost seriousness to Jilu. "Translated into your tongue, it proclaims the following mantra." Kai clutched his amulet under his armour. "I am loyal to the master. I am just your mortal slave. I shall reap what you have sown. To flame and fire we shall go." He spat on the ground as though he was exorcising an evil spirit from his lips. "San was no friend of yours, boy. He was not even a slave. We're not a slave of any human master, anyway. He was planning to lead you to the city of Sepa and turn you into another burning soul. Now tell me exactly what he did and said during your time with this wretched scum," asked Kai impatiently. "Wait, San saved my life," replied Jilu. "He was not saving you, he was claiming you as his prize. He was going to harvest you as fresh fodder for the Khan lad." Kai spat. Jilu couldn't believe this. San, friend, liar or murderer? His head was swimming with contradicting thoughts about his predicament. "Tell me what San said and did with you." "I'm serious, lad." Kai hesitated. "I need to know I can trust you. If I can't trust your soul, I am duty bound to kill you, and I will do this with no further hesitation." All this time his sword still hung in the air as a reminder to Jilu that he was deadly serious. Feeling crushed inside, Jilu told Kai of being freed from the upturned cart and then hiding from some men in the long grass. "Oh, those men were trying to kill San, you poor bastard, because they knew he was a Khan loyal piece of shit," Kai explained. Jilu continued telling him about San offering water, but he couldn't swallow the stale liquid. "You were lucky," expressed Kai. "A gut full of that rotten slop and you'd probably killed you. It's a potion made from a fruit called karmika. They use it to enslave weak souls." Jilu promised, "I did not eat a morsel of food with San." He looked into the eyes of Kai as he spoke, his sword still dangerously close to Jilu's shaken body. Kai saw the truth in Jilu's eyes. His fear was genuine and not hiding a whisper of a lie. In his long time in the wild, he had come across liars and traitors. His keen mind could mark a falsehood just by holding their gaze with his eye. Kai lowered his sword and replaced it into his scabbard. "I am sorry, lad. It's been a life of mistrusting others for me. Upon hearing you hum that melody with such innocence sickened me. I thought you'd been poisoned by them, by the Khan. Forgive an old warrior, please." Jilu held out his trembling hand, which Kai quickly embraced. "There isn't anything to forgive, Kai. At least now I know I am with someone wise who wants only the truth." Kai placed his hand on Jilu's shoulder, exhaled deeply and cracked a little grin. "I must tell you who the Khan are, lad. I'm sorry I kept this from you. It is clear that you are entitled to know the dark history. I mean, for fuck's sake, one extra gulp of water and you could have been one of them." clutching the hilt of his sword on his belt, and with a look of both sadness and anger he began his tale. The story of the Khan begins only 37 years ago, lad. Although the contamination they have spread across the lands have been both rapid and aggressive, the Khan has never been a race of men. It is best to describe them as slave owners. The person you met called San was just a host for its influence. A host body for nothing but benevolence and power. A very dark power, lad. Kai brought Jilu back to the blackened sands of the beach. He kicked away the crust of the melted grains to reveal the lighter sands beneath. In the sand he began to illustrate his story with his sword. One of the oldest territories, wise and powerful in the land, was known as High Canna. Its remains still lay in the West Mountains, once overlooking fresh and lush farmlands. Animals of all kinds roamed in patient herds in the hills and valleys, and they maintained a strong bond with their then kindred spirits in the city of Well. On the complete opposite shoreline of the Lek lies the giant lands of Well and its massive walled city. Learning and wealth were always described as laying between the northwest and southeast on any compass. Everyone enjoyed the existence between these great just powers, and reaping the rewards of good harvests and trade. Well was the keeper of knowledge, a vast library of collections of all that was known, a benevolent line of people who welcomed all, as long as they craved wisdom. This symbiosis of learning and intellectual debate allowed the first maps to be drawn, aqueducts were constructed for all to use, and roads and farms were carved out of the landscape to benefit everyone. The people of High Canna resettled countless people out of the deserted wastelands to the southeast to thrive in the north of Lek. This didn't seem like such a threatening image, Jilu thought to himself. Alas, Kaya continued, one family in the old High Canna region seemed to acquire more land than anyone else. Great swathes of once common ground were parcelled up. They left them to waste, and no more crops could be sown on them. This family took the name Khan. It is said that they used their wealth of knowledge to learn and perform dark magic spells. I still believe that this bloodline originated in Well and not Canna. Well hoarded more information on magic and darker forces than any other city. Their archives and libraries were always the first place any academic would begin their studies on any subject. It's also where I learned my craft in the field. They withdrew into the largest city in High Canna. Deep in the mountains, the walls of the city became strong overnight, they say. Architecture constructed via bleak sorcery. Kai seemed drained as he spoke of the Khan, and Jilu understood his reluctance to burden anyone of innocence with this knowledge. This family gave its identity to a horrible and insidious power across the lands, Kai lamented. The factions started to grow, some loyal to the good in the world, but alas more joined forces with the fear and the magic from their new masters. Traders mainly, wealthy merchants who indulged not only in slavery, but also the displacement of those they considered to be disposable. The growing power of the Khan and their abilities to attain both land and power seemed irresistible to these greedy bastards. Well became increasingly isolated from the surrounding states. Only a brief time after the Khan took hold of High Canna, Well quickly decided to withdraw from the world. They became almost xenophobic in response to anyone seeking their aid or wishing to study within its walls. It became the norm to simply attack outsiders who encroached from perceived dangerous influences. The city of Well closed its doors to everyone who they perceived as enemies. This included the Order of the Moon. What became of your order? It is not too personal a question, Jilu asked with reverence. The elders of Well grew suspicious of our link to the darkness, laddie. They saw our skill as harnessing evil spirits, and as witchcraft. In fact, the opposite is the truth. We fought these insidious enemies, but the rot had begun to set in on our relationship with Well. Poison, whispers and rumour permeated its ranks, and our good and noble name was soon sullied. An order was given to anyone who desired alliance with Well: kill anyone bearing the arms of the moon and leave no grave for their remains. It was a fucking insult from those who were supposedly the wisest in these lands. Those who stood true to our cause were not even permitted to be heard in the court of law. Through rumour and speculation, we were all condemned, tarred with the same brush. Kai looked to the ground, and a single tear smeared his cheek. A far-off look in his gaze showed Jilu that there was definitely more to this story. Perhaps he could ask more questions at another time. Kai looked distraught every time he remembered this betrayal, although Jilu did have one or two questions he felt important to ask. Please tell me why San died, Kai. He may have been one of them, but it was such a sickening sight to see him rot into bare bones before my eyes. Kai looked at the saddened raw eyes of Jilu. He was a collector, you see, lad. He preyed upon the weak types. Weak like you appeared. Sent out by the Khan stooges in the city of Sepah to prowl the slave plantations, offering supposed freedom and companionship to those who felt lost. He effectively was harvesting a pitiful seed sown many years by the Khan family. What, so the slaves belonged to the Khan? Replied Jilu. Not exactly, Kai explained. Those slave owners were granted the right to practice their despicable trade by license from the Khan directly. So occasionally the Sepah spies would be sent out to collect the souls of the slaves as a form of tiding. San was fully intent at getting you to willingly enter the city of Sepah, where you would have been subjugated by the Khan. Shit, whispered Jilu, as he looked at Kai's deeply furrowed face, a face that wore its hardship like the calluses on Jilu's hands. You said San perished after he consumed fruit from a tree near the battlefields. Jilu nodded nervously. That was the karmika fruit I told you about. The soil in that valley is tainted with the blood of countless souls. Jilu remembered the grass and clay sodden with blood as he hid with San. The trees grow tall after feeding on the decomposition of the slain. They are a carnivorous trunk cast under a deep black magic spell. Maggots consuming his flesh. That is an evil, disgusting image that will forever repulse me. Jilu spluttered, trying to resist the natural urge to spew vomit as he spoke. Those maggots, lad, Kai inquired. Did they disappear when they had their fill, or did they follow him to the grave you dug? They seemed to just dissolve, like sugar into hot tea, Jilu replied. Now looking into the distance with a new purpose, Kai pondered for a moment. Can you remember exactly where you buried his bones, Jilu? Of course, Jilu responded. He's buried about a day's walk from here down the other bank of the Santic. Kai packed up the remains of his camp into a satchel. Jilu helped, realizing his haste in leaving meant something very important. Right, lad, it looks like you and me are not to part company just yet. We must go and investigate this gravesite. I'm not fully convinced of my theory as of yet, but together we will find out the answer to this mystery. Jilu and Kai, both carrying a heavy thought on their shoulders, dismantled the campsite. After consuming what was left of the broth, they cleared the fire away. This was a prudent decision by Kai, so they would not be tracked this far by any other spies of the Khan. Making their way along the bank and ditch of the road to the city of Sepah, they made quick progress negotiating the steep incline, without leaving any fresh footprints in the soot and ash. We must be careful, laddie, said Kai. The Khan may know that you have survived San's attempt at abducting you. You may yet still be in danger. Feeling a little apprehensive due to Kai's prediction, yet comforted knowing he now had a warrior by his side, they continued their mission back to the grave of San, the devious reaper of the Khan.